Tanjiro about the special demons who certainly have strength almost equal to Muzan. Knowing that Nezuko has a high enough chance of being healed, Tanjiro immediately agrees to Tamayo's request, even though he has to deal with formidable demons. In the middle of their conversation, Tamayo's hideout is destroyed by a female demon named Susamaru, who is Muzan's henchman. Susamaru uses a Temari ball to destroy Tamayo's house, while her partner, a demon named Yaiba, can manipulate the movement and direction of things using the eyeballs on the palms of his hands. As Yushiro prepares to face Susamaru's Temari ball, the ball suddenly changes direction and destroys his head. Seeing that he had been brought down, Tanjiro got up and prepared to fight the demons. On the other hand, Susamaru, who saw the Hanafuda earrings worn by Tanjiro, immediately realized that he was the demon slayer meant by her master, so she became even more excited to kill him. Susamaru then attacked Tanjiro with her Temari ball, but he could stop the attack, although not completely, because the ball could move on its own. Meanwhile, Yushiro, who had recovered himself, seemed so angry that Susamaru and Yaiba had disturbed his precious time with Tamayo. Susamaru ignored his words and revealed that they were members of the 12 Kizuki. After that, Susamaru then showed her real power by growing her arms to 6, and her Temari balls also increased according to the number of her arms. Tanjiro also became very overwhelmed in the face of a barrage of attacks from her. Seeing this, Yushiro then lent his power to Tanjiro so that he could see the arrows to determine the direction of Susamaru's Temari ball attack. After seeing the arrow that Yushiro meant, Tanjiro could easily read the movement of the Temari ball, although he still had a hard time avoiding it. Because of that, he then asked Nezuko to fight against Yaiba, hiding among the trees. When Nezuko managed to land a surprise attack on Yaiba, suddenly, all the arrows controlling the Temari balls disappeared, allowing Tanjiro to easily slash all of the balls at once, including Susamaru's arms. However, Susamaru can regrow her arms in an instant. Knowing that Tanjiro will not win against her, Yushiro orders him to face Yaiba while he fights Susamaru with the help of Nezuko and Tamayo. While fighting Yaiba, Tanjiro can see the scent of the thread that goes to Yaiba's neck, which is his weakness. However, when he is about to attack Yaiba, the eyeballs on his palms can easily break the thread, creating the arrows to brutally attack Tanjiro. Tanjiro immediately became desperate because he could not dodge the arrows that kept attacking him from all directions. If he tried to slash one of them, his body would be thrown in the direction of the arrow. He then found a way to reverse Yaiba's attack by following the direction of Yaiba's arrows. After mustering all his strength, Tanjiro finally managed to slash Yaiba's neck. However, the fight didn't stop there, as Yaiba used his remaining strength to attack him barbarously, throwing his body in all directions as if trying to destroy him. Tanjiro must do everything he can to survive the attack, as he is determined not to die before defeating Muzan. Even though he had defeated Yaiba, Tanjiro did not remain silent and tried to go to Nezuko and the others to help them fight Susamaru, ignoring the condition of his body, which was unable to walk and could only crawl slowly. On the other hand, Nezuko, fighting against Susamaru, lost one knee when she tried kicking her Temari ball. Tamayo acted quickly by injecting serum into Nezuko's body to speed up her healing. Seeing Tamayo, Nezuko became reminded of her mother, so she was determined to protect her. When Yushiro started to get overwhelmed by Susamaru's attack, Nezuko, who had recovered from her wounds, rushed over to save him. This time, she could kick the Temari ball and even reverse the attack towards Susamaru, who became very irritated, because it was the first time someone had managed to kick her Temari ball and was not hurt. Nezuko and Susamaru had exchanged kicks for a while until she finally managed to overwhelm Susamaru and could not return her kick. Seeing this, Tamayo then told Yushiro that she had just injected a healing serum which had no effect on increasing the strength, so it can be ascertained that Nezuko used her real power against Susamaru. Even so, Tamayo is still worried about Nezuko because Susamaru hasn't shown her true power yet, so Tamayo decides to intervene and stop the fight as soon as possible. Tameo then uses her power to trick Susanoo into saying Muzan Kibutsuji's name, which will automatically activate the curse on Susanoo's body, which was implanted by Muzan when he turned her into a demon. Knowing that she had committed a fatal offense, Susanoo became very frightened and apologized to Muzan. However, the curse had already been instilled, and she could not escape it. On the other hand, Tanjiro and the others seemed to shudder in horror at the horrific sight when the curse destroyed Susanoo's body. After that, Tameo confirmed that Susanoo and Yaiba were not members of the 12 Kizuki because the members of the 12 Kizuki had a special mark of their membership engraved on their eyes. Tameo said that Susanoo and Yaiba were two weak demons that only Muzan took advantage of. Upon hearing that, Tanjiro became horrified when the weak demon Tameo was referring to had beaten him to a pulp and broken his bones. After taking Susanoo and Nezuko's blood samples for further investigation, Tameo decides to leave her house because Muzan and his henchmen already know the location. Tameo, who is very happy because Nezuko has considered her as family, asks Tanjiro for permission so that Nezuko is entrusted to her. However, he insists that no matter what happens and wherever he goes, Nezuko will always be with him, and he will find a way to heal his beloved sister. Even so, Tanjiro thanked Tameo for her caring and kindness. Tanjiro, who about to head southeast after getting a notification from the Kasugai Crow. On his way, he accidentally passed a yellow-haired young man who was forcing a girl to marry him. The yellow-haired young man kept begging her to marry him, even crying profusely. Suddenly, a sparrow approached Tanjiro and chirped as if asking him for help. After understanding the situation experienced by the yellow-haired young man, Tanjiro then pulled his robe and scolded him. Seeing Tanjiro's uniform, the young man immediately recognized him as one of the participants in the final selection who successfully passed along with 3 other people, including himself. The young man then introduced himself as Zenitsu Agatsuma. Although Zenitsu is an extremely cowardly young man who was forced to join the Demon Slayer Corps to pay for his debts, he is actually quite great, having successfully passed the deadly test. Tanjiro and Zenitsu then decide to travel together, until finally, a Kasugai Crow approaches them and asks them to hurry to the location where they will carry out a mission together. Tanjiro and Zenitsu finally arrive at a fairly large old house. There, they met 2 younger siblings who looked scared. Tanjiro then calmed them down and asked them to tell him what had happened. The older brother, Soichi, said that some time ago, their older brother, Kiyoshi, was kidnapped by a demon, and they followed his blood trail to the house. Hearing this, Tanjiro also plans to enter the house and invites Zenitsu. He then leaves the wooden box he was carrying with Soichi and his little sister, Terako, saying that the box is more valuable than his own life and that something in the box can protect them. But then, Soichi and Terako followed Tanjiro and Zenitsu into the house because they were very scared when Tanjiro's wooden box made a creaking sound. Soon after, the house suddenly shook violently, making Zenitsu even more panicky. After the shaking finally stopped, Tanjiro and Terako were separated from Zenitsu and Soichi instead. Tanjiro immediately realized that the sound of the drum beating made the house room change, thus separating them from each other. While trying to understand the situation, he meets a demon named Kyogai with the drums embedded into his body. On the other hand, a panicked and frightened Zenitsu tries to find a way out of the house. But because the rooms in the house keep changing with the beat of the drums, they also find it difficult to find the right way out, until he meets a man wearing a boar's head mask named Inosuke Hashibira. Zenitsu immediately realized that Inosuke was a demon slayer, even though he was shirtless. When he tried to ask Inosuke for help, he ran away from him. Meanwhile, Tanjiro, who had understood the direction of the movement of the room that changed with the beat of Kyogai's drum, then prepared to attack the demon. However, after the next drum beat, Inosuke fell into the room and attacked him. Like Zenitsu, Tanjiro immediately realizes that Inosuke is the demon slayer and tries to convince him to cooperate against the demon. But Inosuke didn't want to listen to his words and continued attacking him. On the other hand, Kyogai, who was very annoyed with the intruders who broke into his house, beat the drum in his stomach, creating powerful air slashes that could slash his opponent's body. Tanjiro and Inosuke looked overwhelmed as they tried to dodge the air slashes as the room kept changing. At the same time, Zenitsu and Soichi seemed to be running frantically to avoid a terrible demon who wanted to prey on them. When they were pressed by the demon, Zenitsu, a coward, fell asleep just like that. Seeing this, the demon became overjoyed, thinking he would be able to prey on them easily. However, when the demon stuck out his tongue to catch Soichi, his tongue was suddenly cut off, and Zenitsu was back on his feet, though not yet fully conscious. Zenitsu, who mastered the thunder-breathing technique, can easily slash the demon with just one attack. Meanwhile, Inosuke, who tried to find Kyogai when the room had changed, instead met another demon with a stout build, which he could easily defeat. On the other hand, Tanjiro realizes that someone else has the same drum as Kyogai, so the room in the house changes again. While walking through room after room in the house, Tanjiro and Teruko finally found Teruko's older brother, Kiyoshi, who was kidnapped by Kyogai some time ago. Kiyoshi tells Tanjiro that at least 3 demons are in the house, including Kyogai, and they are fighting with each other for him. He turns out to have rare and precious blood so that a demon who manages to eat him will get the power equivalent to preying on 100 ordinary humans. During the battle of the demons, one of the demons managed to injure Kyogai until one of the drums detached from his body. Kiyoshi immediately took the drum to protect himself from the attacks of the demons. Knowing that Kyogai was approaching them, Tanjiro asked Kiyoshi and Teruko to look after each other and rely on Kyogai's drums as protection until he came to take them both out of there. Although the wounds he received from the battle against Yaiba have not fully healed, Tanjiro is determined to defeat Kyogai to save Teruko and her brothers. He shook off the pain all over his body and put all his strength into defeating Kyogai, who was once a member of the 12 Kizuki. Because of that, Tanjiro immediately became overwhelmed by Kyogai's quick and insistent attacks. Fortunately, he remembers the advice from his master regarding the very flexible water-breathing technique, so Tanjiro can dodge the attack and finds Kyogai's weak spot. Tanjiro immediately took advantage of the gap in Kyogai's attack and pointed his sword at Kyogai's neck until the demon's head was severed from his body. After defeating Kyogai, he immediately took a sample of the demon's blood and sent it to Tamayo through a cat. When he was about to leave the house with Kiyoshi and Teruko, Tanjiro suddenly smelled blood, so he ran toward the door. How surprised he was when he saw Zenitsu, who went to great lengths to protect his wooden box from Inosuke, who tried to destroy it. Zenitsu did this because he heard Tanjiro say that the wooden box was more valuable than his own life. When Inosuke was about to stab Zenitsu with his sword, Tanjiro immediately took action to save him and then got into a fight with Inosuke, who was very stubborn. Inosuke had a pretty great fighting ability, so he boasted that he had never lost to anyone. Tanjiro, who was very annoyed with Inosuke for attacking his fellow demon slayers, slammed his own head into Inosuke's. The attack turned out to be successful in making Inosuke stagger until his mask came off. Zenitsu looked so surprised when he saw Inosuke's face, which he thought was very handsome, still quite young, and maybe the same age as them. Inosuke looked overjoyed because, for the first time in his life, he was defeated by someone. But then, he fell unconscious due to a mild concussion. Not long after, a Kasugai crow appeared in front of them and asked the 3 demon slayers to follow him. Tanjiro and his companions finally arrive at a big house with a wisteria flower symbol on its gate. The Kasugai crowd then told the 3 to rest in the house because the house was intended for the injured demon slayers so that they could recover quickly. Tanjiro and his companions were greeted by an old woman named Hisa, who then prepared food and clean clothes for the 3 of them during their stay in the house. One night, Zenitsu asks about the contents of the wooden box that Tanjiro always carries. From the beginning, he knew that the contents of the wooden box were a demon, even though he doesn't know why Tanjiro brought a demon with him, because the demon is very precious to Tanjiro, Zenitsu still protects the box from Inosuke. Tanjiro is very grateful that Zenitsu chose to protect his wooden box, even though he already knows a demon is inside. From the start, he knew that Zenitsu was very kind and trustworthy because he could smell someone's aura. While at the rest house, he becomes closer to Zenitsu and Inosuke even though they have very different personalities from one another. Long story short, the three of them finally recovered as usual and prepared to carry out their next mission on Mount Nadagumo. However, in the middle of the journey, Zenitsu, who was very scared to see Mount Nadagumo from a distance, chose not to continue the journey. Not wanting to bother, Tanjiro and Inosuke left Zenitsu and rushed to Mount Nadagumo. When they were about to enter the forest, they met an injured demon slayer and asked for help. However, before they had time to help him, suddenly, he was lifted into the air by an invisible thread. Tanjiro immediately finds out that the one controlling the thread is a demon they must kill. In the forest, they meet a demon slayer who then tells about him and his group who received a mission to eliminate the demons that inhabit Mount Nadagumo. However, when the demon slayers entered the forest, they fought until several of them were killed. Shortly afterwards, Tanjiro and Inosuke immediately realized someone was approaching them, and it turned out that they were the demon slayers still alive. When battling the demon slayers, Tanjiro immediately realized they were being remotely controlled. Several small spiders were seen crawling on Tanjiro's arms when the young man was about to be controlled by the demon. However, with his keen sense of smell, Tanjiro managed to kill the spiders and thwart the demon's efforts. But then, a very strong smell emerges, which dulls his sense of smell, thus overwhelming him quite a bit. During the fight, a spider male demon named Rui appears in front of Tanjiro and Inosuke, who threaten to kill them if the demon slayers continue to disturb his family. Tanjiro immediately found out that Rui wasn't the demon controlling the demon slayers, so he then asked Inosuke for help to find the demon that controlled them. With the beast breathing technique he mastered, Inosuke could easily find the spider demon who controlled the demon slayers, who was assumed to be the mother demon by Rui. On the way to Mother Demon's place, Tanjiro and Inosuke are blocked by a spider web that makes it difficult for them to move forward. Not only that, they still have to fight against the demon slayers, controlled by the demon. He manages to find a way to defeat the demon slayers without killing them, but this only angered the mother demon, who controlled them and slaughtered the demon slayers in front of Tanjiro and Inosuke. Not long after, a headless demon appeared and charged at them. When Tanjiro and Inosuke engage in a fierce battle with the headless demon, the mother demon then uses the opportunity to try to control Inosuke. Seeing that, Tanjiro also asked Inosuke to think clearly so that he could be released from the spider's entanglement. With solid cooperation, they finally managed to defeat the headless demon. Soon afterwards, Inosuke throws Tanjiro's body up so he can find Mother Demon's location. After finally dealing with the Mother Demon, Tanjiro immediately used the water-breathing technique and managed to defeat her. Zenitsu, who was previously reluctant to carry out the mission, finally deciding to enter the forest to help Tanjiro and Inosuke. While walking through the forest alone, Zenitsu was surprised by the appearance of a spider with a human head, causing him to run. Not only that, but Zenitsu also found a house floating in the air, and around the house, many human bodies had spider parts. A large spider with a human head suddenly appears and tells him he has been hit by a deadly poison. The big spider was a demon assumed to be the brother demon by Rui. The brother demon can turn humans into spiders with its poison. Since Zenitsu had been exposed to the poison, he would turn into a spider in 30 minutes. Knowing that he will soon turn into a spider with a human head, he becomes increasingly panicked and scared until he finally becomes unconscious. But then he got up and fought fiercely against Brother Demon. Meanwhile, after defeating the Mother Demon, Tanjiro and Inosuke encounter another demon, who runs scared when she sees the two of them. The demon, who was in the form of a little girl, was assumed to be the sister demon by Rui. When Inosuke tries to catch her, she screams and calls out to the huge and terrifying father demon. Tanjiro and Inosuke were then involved in a fierce battle with the father demon, although their resistance was in vain because their swords could not injure his body in the slightest. Tanjiro tries to slash a tree to make it difficult for him to move. Unfortunately, with his extremely formidable physical strength, Father Demon lifted the trunk of the huge tree and slammed it into Tanjiro's body until he was thrown far from the location of their fight. After that, Tanjiro tries to find Inosuke's whereabouts. But suddenly, he heard a girl's groan, so he rushed to the source of the sound, which was none other than Sister Demon kneeling in front of Rui. Although Rui thought that the spider demons were his family, his treatment of Sister Demon did not reflect their family relationship because he did not hesitate to hurt Sister Demon. Tanjiro doesn't necessarily let Rui act as he pleases, even towards his fellow demons. Because of that, he becomes very annoyed that Tanjiro interferes in his family's affairs, even though he is just a lowly human who should be their prey. Elsewhere, Inosuke, still fighting the father demon, manages to cut off his hand and becomes arrogant. But then, he could regrow his arm instantly, even turning into a demon that was far more terrifying than before. Seeing that, Inosuke immediately became desperate. What's worse, both of his swords broke when he tried to slash Father Demon's body. Inosuke could only let himself receive a barrage of attacks from the Father Demon. In the end, when he almost gave up because Father Demon was preparing to kill him, a demon slayer appeared, who was none other than Giyu Tomioka. With one slash of his sword, Giyu, one of the elite members of Hashira, can cut the arm of the Father Demon and then kill him. Inosuke was also amazed to see the greatness of Giyu, who could easily defeat the Father Demon, which had overwhelmed him before. On the other hand, Zenitsu, who had succeeded in defeating Brother Demon, couldn't resist the effects of the poison in his body starting to react. Zenitsu, who had given up on turning into a spider demon, was then surprised by the appearance of one of Hashira's members, a young woman named Shinobu Kocho, who is Giyu's teammate in dealing with the demons on Mount Naragumo. She immediately injects the antidote into Zenitsu's body, so he can be saved. Meanwhile, Tanjiro, involved in a fierce battle with Rui, became increasingly overwhelmed when his Nichirin sword suddenly broke. Tanjiro was choked by Rui's barrage of attacks until finally, Nezuko got out of the wooden box and immediately protected her brother from the deadly attack. Seeing Nezuko desperately protecting Tanjiro, Rui couldn't understand why a demon slayer had a family relationship with a demon, and the demon protected him instead. Impressed by her power, Rui is increasingly ambitious to kill Tanjiro and make her a part of his family. Tanjiro became very angry and determined to defeat Rui even though his sword had been broken. Rui then reveals himself as the low-ranking member of the 12 Kizuki and unleashes his true power against Tanjiro. Rui then holds Nezuko hostage, forcing Tanjiro to fight against him to death. He probably thought Tanjiro would just give up because their strength was not comparable. However, Tanjiro remains determined to save Nezuko, even at the cost of his life. When Tanjiro almost gave up because all his attacks didn't work against Rui, he suddenly remembered what his late father had said about the fire-breathing technique. Tanjiro tries to do the fire-breathing technique his father taught him when he was a child and finally manages to break Rui's attack. On the other hand, Nezuko, held hostage by Rui in a spider's thread, was awakened by her mother through a dream, so she then got up and helped Tanjiro's resistance defeat Rui. Nezuko's attack managed to give them an opportunity, so Tanjiro immediately took advantage of the opportunity to cut off Rui's head. Even so, Rui had not been completely defeated because his headless body could still move freely, even reattaching his head. Rui, who was getting angry because of the resistance from the Kamado siblings, then used his flagship technique to kill them at once. Suddenly, Giyu arrived there and easily broke Rui's lethal attack and beat the demon to death. However, after Rui and his family demon have been defeated, a new problem arises when Shinobu tries to kill Nezuko, who is a demon. Giyu also swiftly blocked Shinobu's attack to protect her, unconscious after her fight against Rui. Tanjiro, who was seriously injured, could only protect his sister with his body because he could not stop Shinobu's sudden attack. Seeing Giyu trying to protect Tanjiro and his sister, who is a demon, Shinobu becomes curious about the relationship between them. Giyu then tells Tanjiro to take Nezuko away while he restrains Shinobu. Meanwhile, Shinobu, who couldn't understand why Giyu was protecting the demon that became their enemy, told Giyu that he had violated the rules of the Demon Slayers. She would not hesitate to fight Giyu if he prevented her from killing the demon. She then rushes after Tanjiro, Nezuko, and Giyu, who wants to stop her. On the other hand, Tanjiro, trying to escape as far as possible from Shinobu, was suddenly attacked by a girl named Kano Tsuyuri, a demon slayer. When she was about to kill Nezuko, Tanjiro pulled her cape to knock her down and told Nezuko to run away immediately. Kano, annoyed at being dropped, then hit Tanjiro on the head until he fainted. After that, she tried to chase after Nezuko, whose body was shrinking and turned into a child. Nezuko keeps trying to dodge her attacks, and Kano can't hit her. At the same time, Giyu manages to lock up Shinobu's movement, who keeps questioning why he protects the demon. When she tries to put up a fight, a Kasugai crow appears and announces orders from headquarters to capture Tanjiro and his demon sister, Nezuko, alive and bring them to headquarters. Hearing the order, Giyu and Shinobu finally stop their quarrel and rush back to the headquarters. Elsewhere, Zenitsu, who had previously been injected with the antidote, appears fully awake and becomes confused as his body is wrapped in cloth. Meanwhile, Inosuke, who managed to survive the fight against the father demon, seemed exhausted, so he could only surrender when a group of people belonging to the Kakushi lifted his body and carried him away. The Kakushi are a brigade responsible for different tasks, ranging from providing services to the Demon Slayer Corps members to cleaning up the battlefield after demon attacks. The next day, Tanjiro, who had been taken to the Demon Slayer's headquarters, finally woke up from his stupor and was very surprised when he saw Shinobu and the Hashira members. They were standing in front of him. The Hashira are the 9 overall most powerful members and combatants in the entirety of the Demon Slayer Corps. They are often regarded as the most skilled swordsmen among all Demon Slayers, protecting them against more dangerous threats that cannot be handled by any other Demon Slayer. Therefore, their existence literally sustains the entire organization. The Hashira, by their great strength, are the highest-ranking members in the organization. When Shinobu said that Tanjiro would be prisoned for his crimes which were considered to have conspired with a demon, one of Hashira's members, named Kojiro Rengoku, nicknamed the Flame Hashira, confirmed that Tanjiro was definitely found guilty, so there was no need for a trial. On the other hand, a man named Tengen Uzui, nicknamed the Sound Hashira, also seems to agree with Kyojuro. Even he couldn't wait to behead Tanjiro and Nezuko. Meanwhile, the other 2 Hashira members, a woman named Mitsuri Kanroji, the Love Hashira, and a huge man named Gome Himejima, the Stone Hashira, feel sorry for Tanjiro and Nezuko. However, they also have no intention of defending both of them. When all his colleagues discuss them, a young man named Muichiro Takoto, who was the Mist Hashira, was instead busy thinking about the shape of the clouds in the clear sky. Hearing all of their words, Tanjiro doesn't really care about it because what is on his mind now is Nezuko's safety. Shinobu, who is the insect Hashira, then asks Tanjiro to tell him the reason for protecting a demon, even though Tanjiro is the demon slayer. Shortly afterwards, Tanjiro explained everything to the Hashira members, even trying to convince them that Nezuko had never attacked or harmed a human. He also said that Nezuko never even drank blood or ate any human flesh. However, Obanai Igoro, the serpent Hashira, and the rest of the Hashira did not believe his words. In fact, Sanemi Shinazugawa, the wind Hashira, who was annoyed at Tanjiro for having dared to violate the rules of the Demon Slayer Corps, took the wooden box where Nezuko was. He drew his sword at the wooden box, which pierced and stabbed Nezuko's body. Seeing this, Tanjiro immediately got up and slammed his own head into Sanemi's head until he collapsed. Not long after, the Demon Slayer Corps leader, Kaguya Ubuyashiki, arrives and informs him of a request from the former Water Hashira, Sakonji Urokodaki, who is also Tanjiro's mentor. Sakonji explains that Nezuko has unparalleled mental strength and rationality from the human side. Even if she was hungry, Nezuko would never hurt a human, let alone prey on them. Sakonji and Giyu turned out to have guaranteed with their own lives that Nezuko was completely harmless to mankind, so Sakonji begged Kaguya to let Nezuko live with her brother Tanjiro. Kaguya is about to decide to keep Tanjiro and Nezuko alive, especially after knowing that Tanjiro had come face to face with Muzan Kibutsuji. Even Muzan ordered his henchmen to kill him. Hearing this, the Hashira members were very surprised because they had never seen Muzan Kibutsuji, let alone face him face to face. Even so, Sanemi refuses to let Nezuko live and plans to prove to them that she is still a human-eating demon. He even dared to slash his arm to lure Nezuko out of her hideout. Seeing human blood flowing in front of her, Nezuko remained unaffected and instead remembered her good memories with her family. In her mind, all humans are her family, so she must not hurt them but must protect them. Because of that, Nezuko chose to turn away so as not to attack Sanemi. Seeing this, Kaguya becomes convinced that she will not harm humans and asks Tanjiro to prove to everyone that she can protect humans, even though she's a demon. After that, Tanjiro and Nezuko are taken to Shinobu's house, the Butterfly Mansion, so he can recover with special treatment from the Kocho family, which is famous for being very efficacious. There, he finally reunites with Zenitsu and Inosuke, who also undergo intensive treatment after their fight against the spider demons. Tanjiro was happy and grateful because he could finally safely meet his friends again. 2 weeks later, they prepared for rehabilitation training under the guidance of Kanao and the female attendants of the mansion. Over time, they managed to master 2 of the 3 practice sessions quite well. However, they haven't been able to beat Kanao in her training session because she has excellent reflexes and speed. Zenitsu and Inosuke immediately became lazy to practice, thinking that they would not be able to beat Kanao. However, not so with Tanjiro, who tries to find a way to defeat her. After getting a little advice from some of the female attendants, he finally managed to find a way to defeat her. On the other hand, Zenitsu and Inosuke undergo physical training under Shinobu's guidance to match Tanjiro, who has become much stronger after sparring with Kanao. Sometime later, Tanjiro and his friends have fully recovered and can resume their activities as the Demon Slayers. Elsewhere, following Rui's death, the remaining lower ranks are summoned into an interdimensional castle by Muzan. They face Muzan's wrath, who informs them of Rui's death and denounces the lower ranks as weak before killing them. However, Muzan spares Enmu, lower rank, the closest, strongest demon to the upper ranks, and is strongly devoted to him over his macabre personality and worship of him. Muzan gives him ample blood for strength and adds that he can attain more by specifically killing Tanjiro. Meanwhile, Akatsugai Crow tells Tanjiro, Zenitsu, and Inosuke about their new mission to the Mugen train, where 40 people have disappeared. Afterwards, Tanjiro farewells the people of the mansion, including Kanao. He also thanks Giyu for his dedication to protecting Nezuko. Then, the 3 arrive at the train station, but Inosuke causes a commotion, attracting the police. They are forced to flee due to demon slayers not being recognized by the government, unaware that demons exist. They jump onto the train as it leaves, with Kyojuro and Lower One on board. The moral lesson of this story is that if we have very important people or things in our lives, we should always fight for them and protect them. In life, sometimes we'll go through periods where we don't think we're going anywhere, but with a little push from the people around us, we'll get to where we want to be. Last but not least, we never know what someone may be going through, so we should always show kindness whenever we can.